I was standing on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Highland Avenue in ill-fitting basketball shorts, awaiting my salvation. There were these giant tubs of water on the front lawn of my church, and I was being led towards them in what felt like a manner of cattle to slaughter. I had passed a hot Captain America busking for photos on the way to the church, and knowing that he was just a block away was the image of my mind when I stepped up to the tub. And I stepped into the tepid water, and my church elder said to me, "Don't forget, you were fearfully and wonderfully made." And I wanted to stop him right there and ask why God seemed to put more fear than wonder in me when he made me, but I was dunked in before I could even protest. You see, this was the second out of 3 times that I've been baptized, and usually it's a one and done thing, but as a queer trans person, I just wanted to make so sure that I was doing it for the right reasons. And I was 11 when I was baptized for the first time. My mom was a staunch atheist, but my grandma, who I spent most weekends with, loved God. She suffered from depression, and where I would find solace in Lexapro, she found it in the Word of God. Now, at this point in my life, I was still 10% convinced that fairies were real, so I wasn't exactly a hard sell for the church. I'd been indoctrinated quickly and soon enough was arguing with my mother over my sincere belief in creationism. And I was baptized in the basement of our church, and I wore a sundress, and my hair was curled meticulously the morning of. And as I stepped into the water that time, I thought about all of the elbow grease that my grandma put into polishing our church's floor every week, of the labor that she performed for a God that she didn't know, of a God that she had never seen. And I so desperately wanted something like that to fit into this narrative and into this story that was created just for me, that I was automatically a part of. And I took the steps into the water and had no idea what any of it really meant. Every week I would go up and accept communion after, and sure, it was his blood and his body. And even at 11, I kind of knew the homoerotic undertones of that, but I didn't know God. I was terrified of him. The adults in my church really didn't help. Every week they would tell me how proud they were of me that I had come to God at such a young age, before they spent the rest of the Sunday school session talking about how men shouldn't kiss other men and how lesbians were going directly to hell. And as I continued to eat the flesh and drink the blood, and as I got up from that first baptism, that fear only began to grow further and further. And what questions I had at Sunday school were never answered, and if they were answered, it was some really dark shit. And I prayed to God, because we were supposed to have this direct line now. But he never really answered. And even though I was baptized, I still felt like I was going to hell. So as I wrapped myself up in my towel after my second dunk, I was filled with that same sinking feeling. And I replayed those words in my head, fearfully and wonderfully made. I still think about it. That idea that someone could be made in both fear and wonder, that those can both exist within someone, was supposed to be something special. And fearfully was supposed to translate to being made with great reverence. It was supposed to be something beautiful, but I could only think about the fear that was instilled in me in my first church. The fear of my love being wrong, the fear of my desire being wrong, the fear of my body not being my own. And this Hollywood church didn't exactly cast out my sins. They were like, we love the gays, but we don't really talk about it. But did you see that episode of RuPaul's Drag Race? But also, like, don't be gay, please. And that didn't really bolster my faith. So the third time I baptized myself, I decided to do it on my own, because if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. And years of wrongful desire were finally catching up with me. And at this point, I had been out as trans for a while. I was well endowed in the community. I knew who I was. I was 3 months recovered from top surgery. And when I looked in the mirror, it felt right. It was easy to say I was trans, and it was something I was proud of. My external finally made sense to me. But my sexuality was something I had absolutely no control over. It was Goliath, and I was David throwing stones at acronyms and flags and hoping that one would land and that I didn't go immediately to hell for it. So one night I was laying with my girlfriend at the time, and she told me that she loved me. And this wasn't the first time that she had said it, but it was the first time that saying it back felt like it was a lie. Because I did love her. Because why shouldn't I? She was lovely and gorgeous, and I had no reason not to. But in that moment, I thought back to shirtless Jesus on the crucifix, who was probably my first crush now that I really thought about it. And it clicked. And I managed to mutter out, just the weakest, I think I'm gay. And for someone who spent their entire adolescence writing Sherlock fan fiction, daydreaming about dating Oscar Wilde, calling everyone honey, and never having a successful relationship with a woman, you'd think that I would have been able to come to this conclusion a lot sooner. But I had said the words out loud now, and I couldn't take them back. And a bolt of lightning didn't immediately strike me down. And despite the tears, I felt fine. Better than fine. Actually, I felt amazing. And after a tearful but ultimately amicable breakup, I decided to get in my car and drive to the beach because it felt like the right thing to do. And when I got to the beach, I took my clothes off and I walked into the water because it also felt like the right thing to do. And for the first time, I felt the ocean air on my bare chest, and looking down, I saw the scars on my chest, and I thought of the scars that Jesus bore, and the scars of Saint Sebastian, and the scars of Sergius and Bacchius. And I took a deep breath, and I plunged myself into the water. And it was much colder this time, and the waves kind of crashed over me, but it was the closest I have ever been to feeling something spiritual. Because this time, I baptized myself in a history that I believed in. I baptized myself in the names of men that would cozy up in speakeasies, and in the name of tailored suits and hidden flesh, and in the name of men who bound their chest and shaved their heads. And I realized that, like God, I wouldn't be able to meet these men, but that I was one of them myself, and that I fit into a narrative of boundless resistance, of love, and that I was fearfully and wonderfully made by those before me who had the courage to love and desire like I do today. Thank you.